Good morning, y'all.
Did you say y'all?
Y'all.
Morning,
That
y'all.
was paying homage to the Southern Room.
Morning, y'all. Have a blessed day.
Oh, bless your heart.
I knew someone that used to say in the morning, if you'd say, "Hey, how are you?" He'd say, "Oh, I'm blessed by the best." I like that.
Southerners have the best little quotes.
They do.
Yeah.
They do.
All right, 330. What is it?
I don't even know. 269? Is that it?
595-1600.
I'm just throwing out numbers.
Youngstown Stock Channel. We're going to talk about things that happened over the weekend. It was a busy news cycle. Anything on your grill you want to talk about?
I mean, do you want to fire people up or no?
You know what? Might as well.
So I have a question, and
Okay.
I don't mean this in a facetious way. It's an actual question that I don't know, and I would like to know. The protests over the weekend.
Yeah.
When people protest, whether it's the No Kings protest or anything else, I guess it will depend on what it is they're trying to accomplish, but like, what are they trying to accomplish? Like, what do they think is going to happen? What do they think is possible to happen? Like, what action are they wanting to come about? I don't get it. Like, if it's just we're verbalizing our displeasure, okay. But if it's this should be done, what is it they think is going to happen?
So our founders thought that it was pretty important for the public to be able to air their grievances.
Mm-hmm.
And you had a representative who would hear those grievances and then take action depending on the number of people who were upset or, displeased. And so there's a whole, this is sort of like the process, due process, right? This is how it works. So
that is what it is.
So, and this is why the systems of government are sucky, and because they're easily exploited. So let's just say you're HR, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you have a direct line to the CEO to be able to enact the change, right? So someone takes it seriously and only says stuff to you that is actionable, is legitimate, isn't just someone complaining. And then so you're like, okay, well, that's a true problem. Let me take this to the CEO. And CEO's like, okay, well, if someone was serious enough to bring it up to you, then I'm going to take it serious enough and do something about it, right? That's the normal chain of command. Well, then everybody realizes that they could just control everything by just coming to you, and then you go right to the CEO, and the CEO does your bidding. The problem is people start complaining about things that either are just over dramatic, little whatever, and they overwhelm HR. So HR now is like, I can't go to the CEO for this. This is bullshit. This is not, this is just somebody being dramatic or somebody being displeased. So that one kind of just goes on the shelf. And I heard you out. And then if you don't act on my complaint, now I'm mad at you because you didn't escalate it right up the chain.
Yeah.
So I'm like, F. Kellen, I'm going to go right to the CEO. I'm going to take actions into my own hands, right? And I'm just going to do it because I don't like being told no or not getting my way. So I'm going to escalate that. So where we're at in the channels of how government should function, it should be going to your elected representatives, and then the representatives, if it's good enough to come to the floor, they vote on it and they do something about it. And I had somebody over the weekend perfectly stated that these events and these protests are all straw man protests and events. You understand?
I saw that term, and I don't really know what it is.
It's beautifully placed. Okay. Because here's the thing. You have to have a predicate that is true in order for someone to take you serious. Yeah. If I said that if I said that you were a liar, right? And first deal is that we have to establish that what I'm saying is true. And if you're a liar, then we should act on it. If the charge of calling you a liar is sufficient, whether or not it's true or not, and we act on it, that's a straw man. You basically created your own predicate to be outraged, right? Now, if you were a liar and then I'm outraged because you're a liar, that's a totally different story because it actually had some truth to it. But philosophical and sort of like, there's a whole list of things that you don't do in debates, right? And one of them is the straw man argument. One of them is, me hurling insults, me assassinating your character, and all these things that you just don't do because you lose every debate. We're currently doing all the things that debate teams probably get penalized for, because they're the worst ways of, carrying a victory in the debate arena.
Is straw at all sort of like self-fulfilling prophecy?
Well, not self-fulfilling. It's fictitious. It's a dummy, like straw man, like a scarecrow, right? It's fake. It's not
real.
Anything. But it was it's the biggest self-own that I've ever seen over this weekend. The No Kings thing was like, they don't realize how much tyranny these people put on the table, and they're arguing against their own philosophy of no kings, like people telling you what to do and having power and control over you and whatever. So it was it was funny, but not funny in the same deal.
Yeah, somebody's like, oh, you hate the control and being told what to do, like, I don't know, a mandatory drug you have to put in your body that you are required by the government to do. And it was like all these different examples of what it would actually look like, compared to now all of a sudden people are just riled up over something. And that's kind of what I'm like, what is it they think they're going to accomplish if what they're stating can't even be proven to be true? It's not agreed upon. It's not, I don't even know if it's understood by the people yelling these claims. I see a lot of videos where everyone's like, oh, why are you out here? What are you protesting? And did you see by chance any of the videos of somebody would go up to protesters and say, how do you feel about this quote? And they would read a quote about deporting immigrants and, you shouldn't be here illegally and all this stuff. And they're like, yeah, because Donald Trump's a racist and a blah, blah, blah. And they're like, so that was a direct quote by Barack Obama. And they're all like, well, I still don't like it or something, and it was just like, I don't even think you all know what you're talking about. Is it just me?
So let's go back to the Dark Ages, right?
Yeah.
And there's some dude on a hill in a castle, and I don't like him. And so I start like whispering in people's ears bad stuff about him. And there's nothing much you can do except for get everybody together in large numbers. You grab your pitchfork and you grab a torch and you go up and but the mob takes these things in their own hands. So the escalation from air your grievances to show up in large numbers with pitchforks to civil war and taking things into our own hands, that's the trajectory. Like, there is nothing that short circuits this from okay, so if you had 1 million people show up and it does absolutely no good except for you got to air your grievances, you're a little pissed off that you weren't effective in all of that effort and all that money and time that you invested and nobody did anything about it.
Yeah.
What do you think you're going to do next?
Yeah. And that's what I keep wondering is like, so you have this whole day of just mass gatherings, I guess, with signs and chanting things.
Yeah.
And then the next day comes and
that's it. It's the same as it was before.
Bye.
We still don't have a king. And
yeah.
we all heard you that you don't want one. And when issues come down the pike that are authoritarian in nature, we're going to say, hey, no kings, get on board and shoot this tyranny down. I love that principle.
The only thing one video I saw that I said, okay, at least you have a point. It was this woman, she's actually the girlfriend of someone I know, was protesting the parade and said, I think it's an enormous waste of money. We have homeless people, we have people that can't eat, we have people that are suffering, blah, 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 and we're spending an insane amount of money on a parade. I just don't agree with that. And I was like, all right, I see your point there. And maybe you don't like it. And maybe by talking about it, that future leaders might think twice or decide to do it differently, whatever. If you want to take your Saturday to go say, I think this is a waste of money, I can at least see your point. But other protesters, I'm like, I don't even know how you come to that conclusion. I don't even know if you know what you're talking about. And it's just, I don't know.
My only my pushback on that, like, I'm with that person. The government shouldn't be spending needless money, right? And so $42 million for a military parade to to celebrate the Army's 250 years, right? Okay,
Mm-hmm.
fine. I think that's excessive, right? But I also, like, if you were to put, I'm going to give you two things: a $42 million military parade that helps the military recruit personnel, right?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's too much money, or $42 million spent by USAID to study gerbils' mating habits. Which one would you shoot down? So long that you're going to carry the sign of "Don't spend money on gerbils' mating habits," then I'm cool. Then
Yeah.
you've carried the principle across all expenditures. But if that's the only one that you're targeting, it's really, you just don't like the military, you don't like Trump, or
Right.
whatever.
Like there's probably 10 other things you could have realized we're spending money on that is 100% unnecessary. And it's crickets when it comes to that.
Yeah, that's why I don't even engage in this, because the consistency does not translate to things that you don't like this one.
Yes.
And it's been noted, and they don't care whether or not you like it or not. There's interests that are spending government money on all kinds of absurd things. So get on the bandwagon and say, let's have the government defund all absurd things. End of story.
Yeah, because at least, like, I could see someone push back in support of this parade and make a point. But there's a lot of other things where you could waste money on that I don't see a pushback on, because it would be ridiculous.
Yeah.
And nobody says anything about
Because
that.
it motivated someone to the point to make a sign, and they didn't make a sign when the $42 million went to the gerbils. So it's not about the spending of money. It's about, you don't like the person who's being cast in a positive light, and that's it.
Or she said, we have people in our country that can't afford housing and are homeless and are suffering. And I'm like, then where's your sign about all the money we're spending in foreign countries?
Yes, exactly.
If you're so concerned about helping our own, there's a good situation in which maybe we didn't need to spend that money, but this is your bill.
Rand Paul is probably the most consistent legislator that there is, because it doesn't matter if it's a Republican or Democrat principle. He has a principle of all expenditures, and he shoots down anything that's in that, regardless of his party supporting it or not. You have respect for that because it's that consistency.
Yeah.
Let's see. Let's go back up to Julie. The point was that millions of people disagree with the leader of this country, defying democracy, wanting to behave like an autocrat. I think the point was made. Yeah, and that's somebody's opinion. As people had a rally that believe a certain thing, true or untrue, it doesn't matter. You aired your grievances, and that's it.
That's it.
You could have written on a wall the same thing. I hate President Trump, and it would have done the exact same thing. Somebody walked up to it and say, yeah, me too. And somebody would walk up and say, I don't think you're right. And that's it. You aired it. It's done. The dancing around the thing is, look at us. There's a bunch of us. We all feel the same way, as supposed to recruit new people, convincing them that he is a tyrant who is defying democracy.
Yeah.
Because again, the consistency on do you think President Trump is defying democracy? Like, give me the way in which President Trump is amassing more control and power over people.
I don't know.
Okay, so what is democracy, and are we one? Are we a democracy?
I mean,
we are not.
Well,
no.
Okay, go ahead. Explain why.
We are a representative republic. The founders said that the mob rule is terrible for a government, and so we split powers, right? We split powers between opposing forces so that things are slower to happen and harder to happen, so that you can't have a tyrant who can just dictate everything. So by that definition, if somebody can do something and nobody else can get in the way, that's tyranny. So executive orders, you can make the argument that executive orders are completely tyrannical. And I would agree with that. So amassing controls that can't be power checked by someone else. So for instance, legislators that have been in there for 60 years, that would be a tyranny, right?
Yeah.
Somebody mentioned having term limits break up the power divide and decouple it from people who have amassed massive amounts of power, and they just keep getting voted in because they have a district that keeps putting them there. That
Yeah.
all these things are evidence of, yes, we have way too much tyranny in our system of government because we didn't take the founders serious enough to decouple and break up that power
Like
when it happens.
the whole idea that if you want something to change with them, they can block it because it's their vote. It's their say.
Yeah, think about it. Like
Yeah.
the protesters can't do anything as a form of breaking up tyrannical control. What if the mob just wanted something done and they can force it through? That is tyranny of the mob.
Yeah.
There was one quote, I forget the author of it, but when it was during the revolution and the breakup between the U.S. and Britain, there was an argument being made for let's break away from the king for the tyrannical control. And he said, why would I trade one tyrant 3,000 miles away for 3,000 tyrants 1 mile away? And it encapsulates what happened this weekend is you had lots of mini tyrants who really, really want to get their way. And there's obstacles in front of them. And they want really bad to be able to just have what they want be done right now. That's tyrannical, the profile of tyranny.
Ah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So being told no is part of the process of anti-tyranny. You don't like Trump? Cool. You think he should get in office? No. And then you get to say, oh, man, please.
Yeah. But did we vote? Did people vote
Yeah.
him in? Or did he come and take it?
Yeah. So democracy is there was a duly elected president. He can do what he wants until your guy comes along, and then you can elect him and he can do what they want. That's the system of democracy.
Just because there was a vote and the one you voted for didn't win does not equal
so
a tyrant.
that is more anti-democracy than what the protesters say Trump. You know,
The hypocrisy.
Trump is the worst authoritarian if that's what his deal is. He's the worst at it.
Yeah.
So
Julie says, do you think that elected officials were not paying attention to those numbers of people?
that's mob rule. They don't have to. They can say no. They can say, okay, noted, and they can move on and not do anything about it. You can't force them to. You know how you force them to? You vote, and then they're not in office anymore.
Yeah.
And that's it.
I think anybody paying attention to it were the people that already were on that side.
Right.
And the people who were not were like, it's just another Saturday.
That's right. Okay, so there are millions of people who voted for the other guy that just went in the street, lost, can't do anything, and they're mad about it. So it's the I'm mad I lost rally, not the nothing. It has nothing to do with Trump. These are not Trump voters. They're not. Anyway.
Yeah.
Belabored that.
It's a little hypocritical.
And so, Julie, I want to ask you, do you think if you get a large enough group of people that demand something, that they ultimately should get their way?
Yeah. Okay. So let's say a whole bunch of right put on mass protests with signs and chanting and shouting and petitions and banners that they want, I don't know. They want to outlaw being LGBTQ.
There's a lot of them and they're chanting and there's big numbers.
Yeah, maybe they're like ultra conservative and they're like, this should be outlawed, lock people up, ban parades, do all this stuff. Should they get their way?
If there's a lot of them, didn't the officials see the mass numbers of people who want that thing?
Yeah.
Or should there be an obstacle that keeps the mob away from the controls of power?
Yeah. Should somebody listen to them and maybe have a meeting about this and maybe put something into play? Or would you say, hold up, you can't do that. That's ridiculous.
That's a beautifully illustrated by Miss Kellen here.
Thank you.
The picture the other side with the same weapon. So if you bring a gun to the fight and they've got a knife, you're like, I'm feeling pretty good. But then you're picturing, if I pull out the gun, do I want them to have a gun?
Yeah.
And you've just ratcheted up to a point. It's cool when you're in the driver's seat, but picture the other guy in the driver's seat.
Yeah.
All right. Do you think the civil rights do you think that the civil rights rallies or Vietnam protests had no effect on public policy? I'm sure they did. Anytime you enact violence to get your way, right, or to further a cause, you can get it done faster. but at a huge cost.
And here's the difference. You had talked about the fact that something first has to be true. Was there segregation? Yes. Undoubtedly, you could prove it. It was happening. So you want to change that. You don't really change something that doesn't exist.
Right. If the opposing side, right,
Yeah.
isn't justifying the behavior, they're flat out disproving the behavior.
Yes.
Then the violence would be ill-gotten because you're fighting an untruth.
Yeah. The people that are not out there protesting at No Kings, that think it's ridiculous, are not saying, but we like tyrants and racists and Nazis, and we want to be ruled by this all-powerful entity. No, they're saying, you don't know what you're talking about. You're delusional. What you are saying is happening is not actually happening.
And I think the violent, listen, this is the cost of the civil rights movement and how violence may have won that battle, right? But it taught every future generation that all they have to do is create a noble cause, even if it's fiction, and then use violence on a justified cause on something that's not true.
Yeah.
So that's the cost of not doing it the proper way, resorting to violence, having anarchy. That's the new weapon of choice when you want to get your way for something.
Yeah.
All right. So I got a question for you, changing gears on this topic, because I think it was interesting happened over the weekend. But anyway, have you ever willingly or knowingly purchased stolen merchandise?
No.
Like somebody takes a TV off the back of a truck and sells it to you, or a game console, or the Christmas
Not that
toy.
I know of. No.
Okay. Would you, though, if you found somebody that was fencing product, that you would buy it because it was cheaper?
No.
You would not.
Well, one, I'm not in the habit of buying stolen goods, and two, I would be like, if I'm going to spend money on something, I want it to be a good new product. This is clearly used, and I don't know what you did to it. And you sell stolen goods, which means you're probably
think you
shady.
Inadvertently bought something that may have been stolen? Like, I mean, if you go to any of the marketplaces or the eBays or the whatever that older one was. I can't think of it.
I know what you're talking about. I can't either.
But anyway, you may have someone stole it. They listed it as something they owned, and then you bought it. You don't know any different whether or not it's stolen.
Possible. Yeah.
Okay. So that brings the
Craigslist.
Craigslist. Yes. So there was a meat packing facility that had 75 of their workers deported because they were illegal workers. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So the companies that use illegal labor, child labor, slave labor, they are building the cost of an illegal activity into their product. You as the consumer probably are buying products that have illegal activities built in it. All right. So your phone, if I told you that the lithium that's in this phone was mined by a 9-year-old girl whose parents were enslaved, and in order to work off the debt to the government, has to work in a lithium mine, and that child's labor is in your phone right now. So you inadvertently bought illegal, immoral, unethical labor every time you buy a phone. Now, would you willingly buy, like if I published a database of products that were illegally or I'm sorry, legally purchased or legally manufactured, you knew it was from the original manufacturer, and had 0 hours of slave labor, underpaid labor, child labor, traffic labor, anything like that, would you buy those products?
I could see that there wasn't any of that.
There wasn't any illegal stuff in there.
Yeah.
Do you think it would be more expensive buying
Probably.
it? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So that is the question. So let's just say there was 2 farms, right? There was a cattle farm that had all Americans working, right? They did everything above bar, paid their workers well. And then you had the farm that had 75 illegals working there. You're buying beef, right?
Mm-hmm.
This guy's more expensive because he does it the legitimate way. is it fair to the people who are following all the rules that this company over here is allowed to do illegal things to compete directly against them, and they have an advantage by breaking the law? Because it's easier to steal a TV to sell it than to procure it from a wholesaler, right?
Yeah.
But they have the price advantage because they freaking stole it. So you're stealing labor, selling products. Now, what happens to the consumer? They get used to buying the beef because the illusion is that this is just beef. It doesn't have child labor in it. It doesn't have illegal immigrants working on it. So they get used to a price at a certain way when it was all illegal to begin with.
Yeah, and it sort of perpetuates it. Like, people that buy things online from those like uber cheap clothing places where you can get like clothes for like $7 and stuff because it's made by somebody in a country with no labor laws and probably in horrible conditions.
Exactly.
And then you say, don't be a terrible person and put all these illegal immigrants out of a job and kick them out. And, they're a person too. You should be nice to them. And it's like, oh, and being nice to them is perpetuating the sweatshop they're living in and their low pay so that you can buy something cheap. Is that being nice to them? Keeping them trapped there without any labor laws and nobody is facing accountability for their working conditions because you're getting it for cheap. Is that being nice to them?
So if you were used to buying all of your electronics from Bob out of his trunk, and then immediately they did a crackdown on people selling fenced goods, right? Does that mean that the price of the product went up, or it just normalized without the illegal activity being built into the price?
Yeah, it went to where it should have been.
Okay. All right. Now, they actually, if you go to a government website, they actually have a published document of products that you buy that have child labor, whatever. You can, and it is eye-opening how much stuff we buy every single day that has the root problem built in, and it's hidden from consumers completely.
Yes. And then you're supporting it.
Yeah.
While you're protesting it.
Exactly. So everything from bananas to fruits and vegetables to aluminum to bricks to construction material. It is clothing. Every textile. I mean, across the board, I was trying to pick out the things that I buy on a regular basis. And I'm like, what's freaking left? No wonder our economy is so brittle, because all we're doing is we're buying child labor and enslaved people labor costs and everything that we're freaking buying.
I felt some kind of way over the weekend. I got a hat recently, and it's just, I saw it at a boutique online, and I can't remember what state the boutique is in, but it's not near us. So I bought it online, and has an American flag on it, and it looks kind of military, green. And I just thought it was a cool hat, and I'm wearing it, and I take it off and I look and it says made in Vietnam. And I was like, oops.
Yeah.
It's like,
But you have to undo that when you have so many people that are, thirsty for more child labor products and getting them used to spending money in their, U.S. companies that follow the rules. And so, like, you're talking about Vietnam overseas where we don't have any controls. But here in the United States, we do have controls. If we found a company was using illegal labor in order to produce products, we would end that in 2 seconds. So I think that one of the positive symptoms of the deportations is that we are making it very unpopular or not even capable. Like if a company now has to say, if I build my workforce on illegal people, that somebody might rip it out and I might go out of business, they might take a second look at their business model and build it with real labor, legal labor, instead of leveraging the exploitation of illegal immigrants. I mean, these people are desperate. They want jobs. And so they'll take the job. And it's not like they're going to complain that you're paying them too little wages, because they'll just be deported. So it's not a fair thing to have legitimate companies that do it the right way at a disadvantage to the companies that are not following the rules and law. Julie says ICE is rounding up people and shipping them off without due process. It is happening. Innocent people were being terrorized. Denying it won't make it go away. Kellen. Yes, it will. I'm just kidding. Just kidding. Is this another straw man thing? Because I have not read. I don't know, Julie. You got to tell me where you're reading this. Is this? Let me rephrase it and tell you how I'm processing. ICE is rounding up people. I'm going to say ICE is rounding up illegal criminals and deporting them with
shipping them off,
appropriate due process. Innocent people, in quotes, I'm going to say not so innocent people, are being processed properly, and you weren't denying it.
It's funny how like terrorized, shipping them off. Like, listen to the language that is pushing this idea that, like, I don't know, like we're in some other century.
It's emotional language.
Yes.
Just like, okay, let's do the same thing with Bob, the electronics dealer, right? Now, if we held Bob accountable, right, that might mean that we might take all of his stuff. Did we terrorize him by taking the illegal merchandise that he was selling? We might incarcerate him. Is that terrorizing? We might take him away from his family. He might lose his job, right? Would that be terrorizing it? Or is it somebody committed crimes and all of the things that are due to him are going to follow?
Yeah. If somebody went out drinking one night, got in a vehicle and drove drunk and got arrested for it, and because of that arrest, they were taken away from their family, their kids, they lost their job, they had to go to jail, they had to do all these things. Was he terrorized and shipped off? Or did you break the law and now you're facing consequences? And you probably don't like how it looks, being away from your family, being away from society, losing some of your privileges, losing your job and your income.
You would have to cast those people. And the Democrats and liberals are very good at trying to paint these people as innocents, right? That they were just doing their own thing. They weren't hurting anybody. Why are you bothering them? And I think, a lot of these, especially the first rounds of deportations, these are really bad people. And I don't know why you've given them a big hug and tried to make them into preachers. It's just not it's not a good for your argument.
Because the sources that they're listening to tell them that, will say, oh, this horrendous thing happened, and here's this victim of where it's that sliver of truth. Like the pregnant woman. Was the pregnant woman injured during a raid? Maybe. Did she end up in the hospital? Sure. But what was she doing? What was actually happening there? How did she literally specifically get hurt? There's a lot of other details to that story where, depending on who told it, you have a totally different picture.
Julie says, I have bookmarked a dozen of examples, Joe. I don't know how to send them to you. If you want to just post the name, just give me a single example of someone. I don't want your article. I'll go out and find it, and I'll give you one shot, one opportunity to hit me with one that it was
hit me with your best
what was a targeted person who wasn't a mistake, right?
Totally innocent.
Totally innocent. I'll look it up and see if I can agree with you. But pick a good one, because I'm going to dig into it.
A legal person here legally. His status is legal. He did nothing wrong, or she.
Where they were targeted,
terrorized,
on purpose.
Roughed up.
Those are my stipulations.
Yeah.
But I'm not gonna poison my response until you've said it to me. But just post it here.
Yeah.
What has actually changed with the deportation process from the previous?
From my point of view,
Trump is actually targeting societal events that are most damaging to deport first. Previous presidents just deported based on illegal status alone. And we will get there, Brendan, that once they get rid of the criminal elements, people who they can get a warrant, they can pull them out, and it's low-hanging fruit is gone first. Then what's left are the people that are a little bit, you can add a little finesse to, right?
Yeah.
You can figure out whether or not they have a skill set that's useful here, give them a path to citizenship. They haven't broken any laws since the initial coming into the country, versus round up anybody who just happens to be here that's illegal. Because I think there's going to be where most of the public would support anybody who's illegal, like get it back in line and do this the right way. From just a math standpoint, there's going to be so many of them. You might actually be better off at creating some kind of process that's easy to get in, that doesn't diminish and devalue the immigration process by saying, guys have been waiting for 7 years to get here. He paid $40,000 for immigration, and you have this dude that snuck here illegally. You can't look at that person and say, well, let me give that person the advantage, because then you incentivize more people to come in and cut the line. You got to make it proportional so that guy doesn't feel slighted for following the rules.
Yeah. And I keep hearing all these things that it's like, it's this current administration doing this thing that's so awful, that's never been done before. I've been seeing countless sources of information saying Trump has not even come close to deporting the amount of people that were sent with Barack Obama's administration. They're like, he had thousands more that he was like, get out. If you were here illegally, if you came here illegally, you are going to be heading out of here as soon as we can. It was like mass deportations. But now all of a sudden it's wrong. Now all of a sudden it's bad, and it's rally inducing and all this. And it's like,
yeah, I think it was, if you take it from an entire presidency, I think so far in 5 months, Trump has deported 200,000 people at this point. During 8 years of Obama, he did 3.1 million deportations. So if you stagger it out, if he spends the next 3 years, he's about at the same level where Obama was. So it's really the policy of deportation, while it might have been targeting different people, it was still mathematically about the same number. Let's see. If someone ripped you away from your family because you are blonde, how would you feel? A little terrorized. I don't think they're being ripped away because they're blonde.
If I was ripped away from my family because I was blonde, that would be insane. That would be ridiculous. That would be rally inducing. That would be, we've got to get a change happening.
Exactly.
Let's march in the streets, and we have to get some sort of legislation passed, because that is wildly out of proportion and insane.
If Kellen was ripped away from her family because she was burglarizing neighborhoods, then we'd be like, well, what's the punishment? What is the due process for people who burglarize other people's homes? Oh, being ripped away from their family and kept away from people's homes because she burglarizes them.
If someone broke into your house and terrorized your family and assaulted you and robbed you, would you then not press charges if you found out they have a family? But they have a family. But what if he did it to support his family? What if he's like, I had to come in and hold you at gunpoint and terrorize you and rob you and rough you up a bit because, look, I have little kids? Or do you say, I don't effing care, go to jail?
Yes. Punishment, due process. Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, there's more.
But wait, there's more.
Let's see. I know you don't want to hear it, but had Biden not let in millions invested, we might not have this conversation. Where was due process when they entered illegally? Well,
Oh, unvetted, he meant.
Oh, okay.
Millions unvetted. Okay.
Yeah. So the numbers wise are much higher. And I bet you now when Obama's doing it, we probably didn't have as many of the criminal element as we do now. When you just said, we're not enforcing any kind of immigration law and let anybody, of course, we've got the worst of the worst that got dumped into our system. So I think the low hanging fruit is a really great starting point, but let's just say that wasn't there. Would Trump be handling immigration when it was just a bunch of people that had families that weren't causing a problem? They were filling in farm labor or doing, odd jobs. It would be handled differently. We would have to convert those people into usable labor, legally done, and without, again, diminishing the process of immigration.
Yeah. And let's go ahead and say, all right, nobody's got to leave. You made it here. Good for you. Free pass. You got to home base, even though you didn't do it the right way. You get to stay. Let's say we find out they're trafficking children, and that's why they came here. Do you want to protect those children and send them back? Or do you say, well, but they're working and, they got here and we shouldn't just be rounding people up and kicking them out? Or do you say they're terrible, we want to get rid of them. But then someone's like, oh, but there's so many, we can't. Sorry, we can't. There's too much due process and paperwork, and
the unfair
lot to
part
do.
is that there were so many politicians that allowed people to let 5-10 years go by after should have been deported. If they would have deported them before they got established and put roots in, it'd be much easier. But now politicians being as, whatever they are, now we have to uproot people who may have like changed their ways. And it's a tough circumstance, but they did this.
Do you see much of a difference between wealthy, corrupt politicians maybe throwing a bone to or giving privilege to their wealthy donors versus the other politicians throwing a bone to and giving advantage to people just because they're not wealthy, but they know they can get a political
and that's
advantage?
The expanse of government. It can corrupt because it picks winners and losers. I mean, if I had my constituents, I had 100 farm. I live in a rural area, and all of my voters were farmers, and they all used illegal labor. All I'd have to do is kick some money up to keep that cheap labor, and my politician's going to be like, I support immigration.
Yeah.
Because,
both can be corrupt. It's just one has money and one doesn't.
Right.
But you're still using corruption to influence people to help you get into office.
Yeah.
One buys their way, the other manipulates and bribes their way.
It's unfair because the people who are doing it legitimate, that's the big loser in all of these, is the people who are following the rules are at a disadvantage. So if I had company A, right, and I have to service customers and put a good business plan together and manage my affairs, I did it all by the book and legit. The guy next door is breaking all the rules. He's breaking laws. He's accepting like free government grant money. That's what I'm competing against. And would it be a terrible injustice if I went out of business? The only thing that I did wrong was I followed the rules. That's how you get to anarchy, is you incentivize people not following the rules. And we are so far down the road at giving advantage to not following the rules where I don't know we can come back from it.
I mean, you even see this with like local businesses closing their doors because people are shopping on Amazon.
Exactly.
And they're like, oh my gosh, why are none of these businesses in my town surviving? Well, you're not spending any money there. You're going to a big chain online. So if your local business goes out of business and closes their doors because you don't give them money, you give it to people with no labor laws, and they're illegal and they're selling cheap junk.
You did it. The consumer is complicit in the destruction of companies and economies and whatever. And it's only been that the only reason we used to do a small business Saturdays around here like for many years. And that was trying to convince the public to spend their money with their principles. Even if this costs a little bit more money, you're supporting someone in your community that's following the rules.
Yeah.
Right? But that was like 5%. And on a Saturday, where 95% are people spending their money that support illegal immigration, support child labor, and all of this stuff. And that's what you're fighting up against.
Yeah.
You can just set it on the chat.
Yeah. And then they want to know what happened. And it's like, well,
consumers made the choice.
Yeah.
It's almost like voting.
Exactly. Let's see here. Brendan, I think the lower numbers are actually due to Trump targeting criminal elements because the optics of him deporting will be bad. He is clearly being held to a different standard. Lower numbers are actually due to Trump targeting criminal elements.
Yeah, because you can't mass deport. They're taking warrants, which means that they have to get enough of probable cause or enough evidence to say, yeah, this person, low-hanging fruit, they can be gone.
Yeah.
But after this weekend, Trump went on Truth Social and said that they're going to ramp up the efforts to deport even faster and with more vigor. So this weekend did not dissuade deportation.
Yeah.
So okay, let's play devil's advocate, and let's just say you're on that side, and you think that illegals should be given a chance, and let's save them from being terrorized by deportation. And now you wanted to actually do it. Like your side go into a constructive boardroom and everybody talk about the best and most effective way to stop the deportations. What would it be?
I don't know if it would be anything that's going to be quick. I don't know if it's you can stop immediately. You could try to form some kind of campaign and meetings and things of that nature to get behind or get in front of legislatures and see what can be done. But if it's like halting immediately,
what be done?
I guess if you're like, I feel that the law should say people can come here in any fashion and stay.
That's a bad sell.
Yeah,
like,
it is.
That's what I'm saying. Like, if you have a competing strategy that's more effective than what's being done right now, you're like, hey, if there's a person that, here illegally and murders people and rapes people, all right, so we're going to just round them up and deport them. What are you suggesting that we do with this person?
What I would suggest we do with the murder.
We're devil's advocate here. So you're arguing that Trump is doing it wrong. So what's the right version of that wrong? Not do anything, let that person do their thing, incarcerate them in a prison here rather than deporting them back. Like there has to be a competing strategy that you're arguing for, not just against the one you're doing.
I don't even know what they could do differently. Fill up our jails. That's not going to work very much.
Well, Youngstown's actually participating. We got contracted by ICE that it's a detainment facility for people who are rounded up locally.
Really?
Yeah. So private prisons are being used for certain ones. I don't know if it's while they're waiting deportation.
I say it's only so big.
But you got to get them off the street somehow, and there's limited amount of places that you can put them. So they're using private prisons and state resources to house deport.
Well, then what happens when there's other crime and locally and someone's got to go to jail?
Yeah. All you can see, this is bubbling like this.
Yeah. So that's why I was like, it's only so big.
Right. So deportation, like hurry up and get them out of here to free up those jail cells for more criminals to be able to walk through the door.
Yeah.
We can't, there's 20 million of them. And that's a lot. So I don't know if we're geared to handle that kind of
I can't imagine. Element. Why does Diane say, well, shouldn't Trump be in jail by now?
For
what, Diane? You might have to, maybe we missed something. I don't know why you think Trump should be in jail by now. We'll have to see. Julie's got a site.
Okay.
Tracker reports.
Immigration and Customs Enforcement held 51,000 in ICE detentions. 43% have no criminal record. Many more have minor offenses like traffic violations.
When you say no criminal record, are you including being here illegally? Are they legal people? Do they have documentation that they came here legally? Or do you say their only crime was coming illegally?
And see, I'm almost willing to forgive the criminal side of entering illegally so long that you haven't done a thing wrong since you've been here, especially when we're rounding people up with the aggressiveness that we are right now. So I'll take a look at that website and see if it's propaganda or these people are really like 51,000 people seems like a lot for just having a traffic ticket. But the promise of what Tom Homan was that the first round of the ICE agents were going to round up people that had crimes against them. And I don't know if in those 51,000, if they haven't been convicted of those crimes in a courtroom versus the probable cause of they have enough evidence for an ICE agent to determine that even if they haven't gone to court for this thing, it's obvious enough to do deportations. I'll have to look. I'm not quite sure how that works.
Because I can't imagine what it must cost to fund this. To have ICE come out in such numbers and round all these people up and do these mass deportations and put them on planes that ship them back. It's got to be an enormous amount of money. Why would they waste that money on 51,000 people that did nothing wrong? Why would they spend so much money to get rid of people unnecessarily and then have to get them back. You would think that if they're going to spend that much money, that it's people that are in those characteristics that they say, either hardened criminals or somewhat criminals or doing something illegal here or whatever.
I'm looking up track reports.
Yeah. Julie says the majority of Obama deportations happened at the border. You forget the DACA program. Does that make it different if they made it to the border and got sent back versus if they're here? Or maybe she's saying they didn't actually get in here. I'm not sure what you mean, Julie. Did you mean that maybe they just didn't actually come into the country and they got turned around?
All right. I tried trackreports.org and it's not coming up. So I'll have to look in that.
Yeah.
later.
And Julie, again, if you see someone with like an actual name, give us a name and we'll look them up too.
But sort of like the subtext on this, we want to make sure that the power that ICE has to get rid of people isn't abused and innocent people aren't. So I take that accusation seriously because I think every, you've seen unwieldy cops just going beyond the boundaries of what they're allowed to do just to make people miserable. We want to make sure that the element isn't there. It has to be very well regulated that they don't tolerate misbehavior by agent enforcing, because number one, it would diminish your effectiveness. If you start misbehaving and doing the wrong thing, like your whole program falls apart because public support is necessary in order for this to happen. And number two, that we have to have faith that, that we're following the mission statement. So, because this is just the beginning of it. If this is a 4-year plan to get rid of criminals, and then you start saying, well, you know what, the dude down the street, I just don't like him. Let me put him on the no-fly list and have him harassed and terrorized. If you have an evidence of that, then the person that put them on the no-fly list is the person that I'm holding accountable.
Yeah.
We don't want people to get caught in that net of bad behavior by actual officials. So legitimate concern. It just make sure that it's not one of these straw man deals where you're throwing it out there as a fear and it's not really happening in the real world, and not trying to make everything into that thing that you're fearing.
Like swatting people. Have you ever heard of that?
Oh, yeah.
People swat people.
Mm-hmm.
I would have to think if you did that to someone, you would probably go to jail. Don't you think?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
So nobody wants to see an abuse of power. Nobody wants to see, like we talked the one day about, going to prison because you jaywalked. Is it breaking the law? Yes. But what's the repercussions of it? Doesn't match what you did. But yeah, I just can't imagine that large. And again, are there people who are maybe here legally that get swept up in that? Possibly.
Yeah.
I'm sure. And those greater numbers, I'm not saying it's impossible that somebody couldn't get swept up in that, but a lot, thousands, 50,000.
The best way to deal this, this is like got to war standards. And then when war happens, when you have such a, amount of people, it's almost like if you went and had a real war, right? Two countries going at one another, they're hitting military targets, and in the papers, some innocent person was wrong place, wrong time. Well, they were a casualty. It wasn't intention. It wasn't something they on purpose did. What's the best way to not have, casualties that are innocent is don't let it get to the war standard, the new like that. Have smaller controlled groups where you can control who gets shot and who doesn't, rather than missiles that have a tendency to hit innocent people. So if they would have tackled this when there were 30 illegal immigrants, they would have been able to hit it with more precision. Now that it's so big, I blame Biden for letting 20 million of them in there and created the conditions where you're going to have more innocents caught up in this.
Yeah. So, Julie said that is what I mean, meaning, according to her, Barack Obama turned them away at the border. They didn't actually get in. And that's what they mean by he deported. He's like, no, you're not even getting in. Turn around and leave. Is that better then? Because so he didn't let them in. Then another guy let them in. And now this guy's like, get out. But the one who says get out is the bad guy. This one said, you're not coming at all. This one said, I let you in, even though my colleague said no. I went ahead and through my own reasons, let you in. And then this guy says, no, you're not supposed to be here. Get out. But that's the bad guy.
Yeah.
That's the only bad guy. That's what it doesn't make any sense. Like now it's like semantics.
But it's, and that's what I'm saying. Like if you took Biden and Trump and pushed them together, we would say that's bad policy. But we're dealing with let everybody in and then kick everybody out versus the right way, which is turn around at the border. No families are broken up. You know, they didn't ingrain themselves into our society. They didn't take government services. It happened at the actual border, which is the way that immigration is supposed to function.
Yeah.
And that's another thing. These sanctuary cities, that just blows my mind how a city can defy federal law and get away with it. Like,
how? Yeah. How is that even a thing?
I don't know. I honestly don't know. In the first time I considered this, like when federally you have a controlled substance like marijuana, right? It is federally an illegal substance. And then states and cities decided to say, we're not acknowledging the federal law. The federal is still legal or illegal, but state you can operate and do illegal things, even though federally it's illegal. And I don't know how that functions.
Like I looked up last week, somebody commented and said it is not illegal to be an undocumented immigrant. So I looked that up. And from what I saw, it said it is not a federal crime, but it is a civil matter. And I'm like, what? And it's like, oh yeah, in civil matters, you can sue someone, you can bring charges against someone, you could be wronged, and it's a civil matter, but not illegal on the federal level. And I'm like, I don't get it. I don't get how that works. Like you said, something is illegal on the federal level,
but then cities can get away with it and states can get away with it.
I don't quite
understand that.
Yeah, I don't get it. Trump said he's targeting Democratic cities, Julie said.
Yeah, sanctuary cities. People who are breaking federal immigration law and saying outwardly, I am doing this by harboring people who have broken the law. I mean, you take a more egregious thing. Let's just say a city really likes murderers. And they're like, hey, I know these people. We like them. They're going to live here. Federal agents, don't you dare come in here. We're going to protect our murderers. Everybody would think you were insane for defying federal law on the, states defying federal law or cities. I don't know, it just drives.
Julie gave you a different site. I think there was a typo maybe in the first one.
Tracereports.org. That makes sense. I think I've seen that. I do think he is targeting LA because it is the head of the snake. Much nationwide drug and human trafficking starts there. Absolutely. So the density of the illegal population, if I'm bringing drugs in or I'm trafficking human beings, and I'm going to pick the state that is more open to me getting away with it. And so California is your hotbed. I mean, it literally, Texas is, they probably have a problem, but it's not the same because they're not welcoming them into Texas. So.
Yeah. Maybe a little less violent type of crime too.
Yeah. Cause I don't think many people realize how much of a business it is, the illegal immigrants, and how much money's made by the cartels and, corrupt government officials. They are selling permission to come into the United States. So smuggling people in and things in is huge business on the border.
Yeah.
So Nashville, Tennessee, this is from an article. For Chelsea White and her children, the world as they knew it came crashing down when she and her husband encountered a Tennessee Highway Patrol checkpoint on Friday night along a quiet stretch of highway in rural North Nashville.
Okay.
Right. I'll look into that report later and read the whole article.
Families disappeared. There's that disappeared again.
Speaking of propaganda and state issuance of narrative.
Yeah.
NPR, PBS passed the House for defunding both of those platforms. So state-sponsored news and programming passed the House. It goes to the Senate now, which gives it a good chance for us to cut out government spending on news organizations. What are your thoughts?
It seems like a good thing.
Okay. Why?
Government spending on a news organization.
Should governments own news organizations?
No!
Why?
Because then it could be corrupt and biased, and they can buy their narrative and say, if you want my money, you better report this.
So if NPR, if their editors and reporters were a 50-50 split Republican Democrat, now would you tolerate government funding because it's balanced on who's reporting the news?
More so. It still seems like a slippery slope.
So how and
so.
Why did the government get involved in news and networks and programming?
Probably so that they can push their agenda. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah. That because, and they like to do this weekend, they would take like a North Korea or a Russia, and they would show the similarities between what Trump is doing and what authoritarian regimes do. But they never once said state-sponsored television would be one of those similarities of tyranny. Why was that one missing from the list? Because NPR and PBS have a liberal slant made up of mostly activist liberal reporters and whatever. Now, NPR is probably, of the two, it is less obvious, even though they're staffed with a lot of liberals. I can sometimes read an NPR article and not know the persuasion of the person who wrote it, and that's a good thing.
Yeah.
But both the groups went before Congress and they testified, and it was really eye-opening how slanted the people who work there and collect those checks, that they are not representing equally the people who supply those checks.
Yeah.
And so that's my disagreement. And I think somebody said that because the big thing with PBS is the programming for children, right? So if, let's just say the government created a network that taught children academics and whatever, and so people that didn't have any money can get over the terrestrial TV and they can get educational programming, cool, right?
Yeah.
So long, the one promise that you have to make: never take on a political argument. You have to be completely apolitical or you lose your funding. Right? Just like a church doesn't get non-tax or tax exempt status if they ever participate in political campaigning. And there's a lot of churches that get super close to that dividing line. If you do not participate, you can't participate in the actions of propaganda. And I think that's where they went wrong. So I would say sledgehammer, get rid of it. The programming that has market value, somebody will pick up. I see that Netflix picked up Sesame Street, which is awesome. So yeah, thoughts from our listeners out there. Are you happy that PBS and NPR are Gonzville? And any media that collects any checks from federal government, you have to be non-biased, unbiased in all forms.
And if you're biased, find your own money. There's a lot of news organizations that I used to be like, this isn't news. This is a show. This is a ratings-driven TV show that they push their opinions. You have the right to do that. Fund it yourself.
Now, what if you took an educational program and then you use it as an indoctrination deal? So it's not overtly political, but all it's ever about, like we have I think it's Mahoning Matters or something like that, a news agency that report local news, and every single article is coming from a soy boy liberal persuasion, and you can tell it in every word that they report. And sometimes you just notice that every story is in one direction, so all the other direction stuff is just omitted. So there are ways that if you've got a political persuasion, that you can corrupt the news that you're reporting. So that's why I say cut it out completely, because then all they would do is go covert activism through their programming. So for instance, let's just say it's just the people who support pride and LGBTQRVs, X $+, all of that. Can you have programming on Sesame Street that supports it versus condemns it or criticizes it? Those are the kind of things.
I feel like we missed a whole bunch of interesting comments up high.
No, we're good. Funny how the Dems can pull one name, but we could cite millions coming into the country illegally. there is really nothing that could be presented to you that could influence your thoughts on all immigrants should be deported, is there? Legally, yes. Illegally, no. And that's the crux of the argument right there. Persuasion, right?
Yeah.
So if you want to look up how to persuade people, right, it is equally almost impossible to take entrenched partisanship and have an open-minded deal. So in order for us to have a debate, I would have to be open to being wrong, right? And so if I ask Julie, is there a chance that you've been had where the people that instructed you and gave you your information had an end that they wanted you to be indoctrinated in one segment versus you to be totally informed and make up your own mind? So we're not in an era of persuasion, I assure you.
Yeah. Julie, is there any instance that you think an immigrant should be kicked out of this country? In any instance, just give me any at all. Do you think anybody that has come to this country should be kicked out, should leave, and should not be here?
I feel like we pick on Julie way too much here.
I don't know if we pick on Julie. We interact with Julie.
But she is really good at presenting things, and it's great argumentation pieces. So
Julie, you are just as important to this show as Joe and I.
Right.
You keep it going. Legal yes, illegals no. Julie says protected status. Those in the process of asylum, those with visas. In your opinion, all immigrants are illegal? No. I feel like that's another thing too. If you're debating or having a discussion, if you tell somebody what their opinion is, that's
straw
kind of a
man.
no-no.
That is definition of straw man.
Yeah, like to say, you think everybody who's come to this country is illegal. And it's like, literally never said that. It's not what I think. Like we could say, Julie, you think all criminals should be allowed to stay here. It's probably not what she thinks. So when you say those things and you try to force a stance on someone that is not what they're saying, that sort of shows either an emotional appeal, bit of an immature appeal, and or you just don't know what the other person is saying, and you just, I don't know.
But the indoctrination means that if I said, I want Julie to think right now and think, what if Trump is not a racist? What if I'm wrong about it and he's not a racist? He doesn't want to be king. He's actually just a blustery guy that wants good for other people. If you can't even get your brain to dig in and discover whether or not any of the three charges are true, or if you have it right in your brain, then you can't, there's no persuasion that can even happen.
Yeah. And that's kind of what I did a couple years ago. Is I was one of those people that I just sort of took Trump at face value. And I thought, oh my God, he comes off as such an arrogant jerk. He drives me nuts. I want to see someone punch him in the face. I hate this guy. I hate everything about him. And I finally got to the point where I'm like, there's got to be something, because there's a lot of Americans that don't feel the way I feel. There's people that I love and respect, and I think they're pretty smart. They've got a good head on their shoulders, and they don't feel the way I feel. There's got to be something else here I'm missing. Let me see what I'm missing. Let me see if there is another side. And if there isn't, then I'll just be deeply rooted in how I believe, and you all are misled.
So what did you come up with?
I came up with, I was pretty blind to, I was blind to other things, because to me, it's just what a jerk, what a jerk, what a jerk. And if you actually go and see, okay, why do you think he's a jerk? Because here's what he actually did. Here's this situation. Oh, by the way, here's what this news story said he did. And then here's the proof that that's not true.
All right. So let's take the science angle on that.
Uh-huh.
Okay. So if I was allowed to say you were something, so Kellen, you're a racist. Now it's incumbent on me to not just proceed as if you're a racist because I said so. I have to prove my case. And if somebody objects to whether or not it is, I can't just proceed because I said so. There's sort of like a standard that I have to overcome to have racist. Because if I say that Kellen's a racist, I can start digging through your actions. Now I'm looking for racist Kellen, and I can say, oh, you know what? She hired someone in our line, and guess what? They were white. Kellen's a I've got some evidence here.
Yeah.
Right? I'm going to ignore the parts where the things that say Kellen's probably not a racist, because that doesn't confirm my bias in Kellen now. Now I'm super digging through. And if you ever do something that is quasi-racist, right, you're done, because now I have the evidence that you're a racist.
Yeah.
And you have this mass delusion of people who put the charge out, and it was that self-fulfilling where they dug through. So, okay, the No Kings thing cracks me up, because did Trump say things would be easier if he were king? Did he say that?
I feel like there was.
All right, so that's evidence number one.
Yeah, there was something
he made a reference,
to that effect.
a flippant reference, that if he were king, he wouldn't have to go through all this BS. Right?
Yeah.
Now, does that mean that he wants to be king?
No.
Okay. All right, because that would be one jump where you can take a guess, and you can be curious as to whether or not he's floating the idea of becoming a king. Evidence two. I'm going to run for a third term, right? Would that be evidence? Because now I'm digging. I want to see if this guy really wants to be king. All the things that a person that wanted to be king, what would they do if they were actual king? And then you look up, like, if you wanted to be king. So I'm going to Google, if I wanted to make a United States into a monarchy, what would I have to do? One, and I Googled this, by the way. Number one, you would have to seize total control, which means that all opposing forces have to be decimated, right?
No other parties, no voting.
Anybody who critiqued me, I would need to silence them. Okay. So the evidence of the things that Trump is doing, where he might have said being king would be easier, and maybe I'll run for a third term, curiosities go up and say, maybe I'm a little suspicious the guy really wants to become king. Does he now do things that could actually make him a king? It's not even believable. I can ask a 5-year-old and say, is Trump doing things that want to make him a king?
And the biggest thing that sort of pushed me out of the mindset that he is just this evil, nothing but bad kind of guy is the moment I started seeing that somebody said, guess what Trump said? He just said this. He did? What an a-hole. And I would search it up and I'd see the context and I'd go, actually, he didn't. That's
every time.
That's not how he meant that.
Time.
And then I'd let it slide. Okay, well, maybe that's not a real example, but he's still an a-hole. And then I'd see another one. Oh my God, they're saying this. And I'd look at it and I'd go, it's not at all how he meant it. That's taken completely out of context.
That's because you want that to be true.
And more and more and more. And it got to the point where I was like, nobody is a good source of information. In fact, they're all bullshit. I can't believe I've been listening to this. And that is how you start to peel away and say, oh my God, there are biased pieces of information. And people, and then you really want to drive that point home. Anybody that is just maybe suffering from Trump derangement syndrome, or they think they just, he's a bad guy, period. He says terrible things. Put yourself on the internet, like in a podcast or on social media, and say something, anything about anything, and watch what you get accused of being. I can't believe you said that. You're like, no, you twisted my words. That's not what I meant by that. Oh, you're such a, no, I'm not. And start to see if your words can be twisted and you could be painted in a different light. And you don't think we do that to public figures and presidents? 100%.
Yeah.
Trust no one.
Carter says, when I owned a company in California, most of my employees were legal immigrants, and I love them. Keyword is legal.
Yeah.
Carter also says 30 years later, and I still talk to my former employees.
Yep.
Carter says, so Kellen has a cure for TDS, so beat it. Julie says, my brain knows what a liar, bully, racist, egomaniac, misogynist, cheat is, and so do you. Of course. And every day, there's a level that you could take me to that I'll believe you too if it's scientific and it's truthful, non-emotional. It survives criticism.
Yeah.
But if you're willing to suspend common sense and logical, elimination, then I just know that you're just a zealot, and this is just a religion of hating Trump versus somebody who's exploring what's really happening. If you get it wrong always in one direction, that's information, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And even some of those, like if someone's like, oh, he's an egomaniac, I can see your point. I can see examples of maybe that. If someone's like, oh, he cheats, I could see examples of that. I could see examples all day long of him appearing to not be a very stand-up guy. But when you're giving evidence to the contrary, if you're like, he's a racist, okay, well, here's an example where he actually changed something locally to allow African Americans to do something that they weren't allowed to do before. Do you consider that, or do you still call him a racist?
So let's take her example right now. I dare you to say that Trump, I think she meant to say, is not a prolific liar. Cool. Prolific liar. Is he the only one? I agree that he tells some fables. He's not a straight shooter when it comes to truth.
Yeah.
But on the House floor, I see representatives go up knowing that what they're saying is not true.
Yeah.
And they too then are a prolific liar. In fact, I can go through a day and probably take about 100 new people and find that they're willing to perpetuate something that is untrue for political gain. So if you think that what Trump says is bad, you also have to take the other people that are doing the same thing. So I think like right after that Garcia guy got deported, you watched everybody tell lies, knowing that they're in positions where they can know the truth if they wanted to.
Yeah.
That would be considered the same type of lie. So if all of us said, you know what, we're done with liars. We're not voting for them anymore. We're not supporting them. I'll point it out wherever it is. I have complete respect for that. But if you could only paint Trump as a liar and give everybody else a pass, I'd have no respect for that opinion.
Yeah. If you want to say Biden never lies and the media never lies about him, and if you come to find out, and this is a hypothetical situation, if you came to find out that maybe Biden was diagnosed with dementia years ago and the media lied and the people in office lied and Biden himself lied and everybody covered it up, and then you found out that it was true and they were lying, do you or do you not then discredit every media source that lied about it, every person in office that lied about it
them as well?
Yes. Yes. So if they do it to one, do you not think they will do it to another? And when I started sort of coming across this, I was also beginning to become interested in RFK Jr. And I was reading more about him, and I was watching him in a lot of interviews and listening to what he has to say, listening to his stance, what his background is, some things that he's done. And the moment I saw NBC News say anti-vaxxer RFK Jr. is trying to do this, I went, you're done.
Yep.
You are no longer a credible news source, because I know what actually happened. And just like the moment somebody said JD Vance admitted to making up the immigrants and eating cats and dogs story so to make headlines. And I saw the actual verbal interview of what truly came out of his mouth. I said, that news source, you're gone. You're a liar. You're discredited. Start doing that. Whether it's with Biden, whether it's with Trump, RFK, Walls, whatever it is, show me an article that you think they painted that person in a bad light. They did it with Kamala Harris. I didn't vote for Kamala. I'm not a Kamala fan, but I watched news organizations say things about her that was not true and accuse her of saying things that she did not say to paint her in a bad light. And I went, nope, you're no longer a credible news source. You're
so if Julie said everybody's a liar and I don't like liars, I want to be outraged too. No more lying. Hold everybody accountable when they lie. This is a book. Executive order, April 23rd, 2025. Trump issued an executive order directing federal agencies to deprioritize the enforcement of disparate impact laws, including within Title VII of the Civil Rights Act. The order aims at significantly reducing the use of disparate impact liability and could make it more difficult to prove and enforce civil rights laws. The order also revokes presidential approval for regulations that authorize desperate impact liability under Title 6 of the Civil Rights Act. I heard it's too much to do in this thing. I heard an entire dissertation on the Civil Rights Act and how it sort of like massaged on laws and set up predicates in the future that caused all kinds of legal issues. And premise is that in the United States, you have to apply rules, laws, benefits, whatever, equally amongst all people, right? And so the undoing of what's happening doesn't fly in the face of civil rights law. It equalizes it and makes all things apply equally. You cannot give an advantage to one without giving the advantage to all. And that's the right. And so it's wrapped up in the Civil Rights Act. And you can understand at the time how it was necessary because the power dynamics for minorities had a huge disadvantage. And they had to write it so that we can equalize the playing field. But there's a horizon, a sunset on when all of the rules, like you can go out to all of the rules and find where there is racism built in the rules, and or anything that is given, like I said, is unfair or unequal then to a different group. It doesn't create opposite, or what do they call it? Reverse discrimination.
Yeah.
Discrimination has one definition. It's where you take a group and you give them a disadvantage, but you do it systematically or systemically.
Yeah. When we made it so that we did away with segregation as far as like black water fountain, white water fountain. Whites can sit here, blacks cannot. Whites have to go to school here, blacks have to go to school here. When we started changing things like that, we did not say, okay, now blacks can do this, but whites can't. Blacks can do this, but whites can't. It's supposed to be everybody.
All people can.
Everybody is equal. Everybody can use this building. Everybody can use this bathroom. Everybody can ride this bus. Everybody can use this water fountain. When all you do is take something and change it to swap it,
you just did the wrong thing in the opposite direction.
You're now not fighting racism because the person who was getting shit on now no longer is. The person who wasn't is now getting shit on. That's not how you undo it. You undo it so nobody gets shit on.
Exactly. And that's once you write the laws and make it so that it equally applies to everyone. Now you can make the argument that the people who didn't have the same rights and freedoms that you did now are behind, right?
Yeah.
And then so you take activists and civic groups and do it yourselves. Don't, like I said, do not use racism to write it. Use humanity to write it. You can appeal to people like me who, you know, if you had somebody, a family, let's just say you had family A who's now had 200 years in this country building businesses and has found prosperity. And you have someone who 50 years ago got the same rights as that dude. They're like 150 years behind now. So what do you do with those people? You profile them, right? And you let people choose to support, because there's not a uniform racist deal. I know everybody wants to say that racism is prevalent and black people are being treated, or Chinese people are treated differently. When you appeal to a majority, 80% of the people, and there is a story to tell about how let's help this person get caught up, what do you think the public support would be where you take it upon yourself and you, through your own charity, help catch somebody up rather than somebody holding a gun and forcing you to help somebody? That's a big difference.
Yeah.
Through
sure.
government action, if every government action gets corrupt, then you could take something that's noble, that help other people, and it will turn into it'll get corrupted, and it'll just sway the power and give advantage to someone else and totally discriminate against another group. It'll happen every single time.
Yep. Do you feel some kind of way? So like we've talked before about, nowadays tipping is like everywhere, you know. Oh, you'll see on your screen just a little thing to fill out if you want to leave a tip for like every little thing. Or donations. Hey, do you want to round up to the nearest dollar to help needy, starving kids in whatever country? And do you feel differently if you are asked to donate versus, hey, by the way, we increased your bill so that you donate. Or
when
so
you're
that
in
it
the
goes to
middle of a
this.
transaction, it is exploitative to when someone opens their wallet that you ask them for more. All right. So I think the timing is wrong. It's it's using a situation, right, and manipulating you into doing something that you were not moved and motivated to give to the starving children. The only reason most people do that is to pass judge or get beyond being judged by the person that's in front of you. I went to a national park yesterday, right?
Oh yeah.
And I went up to bought some waters at the store, and there was a state park employee that was manning the register. And she said, after I bought my water, she was like, "Would you like to donate $1 to the whatever park services?" And I said, "No, thank you." Right? Because listen, charity is supposed to change your insides. It's supposed to rewire your brain. You're supposed to be so ready to go help somebody out that you are motivated to do uncomfortable things in the service of other people. That's a function. Now,
Yeah.
I wouldn't get rewired by buying a balloon at a restaurant or whatever. There's no brain changes. It's simply capitalizing on an open wallet, and it's not good for us.
So what would you do if you bought the water, they didn't ask you, and you looked at your receipt and it was like, the water was $6 plus $1 to go to the wildlife blah blah organization, so your total was $7.
Well, that's more passive, but they're using a transaction. They're not using.
Do you feel better that way if they just built it in?
Better than asking me?
Yeah.
That's too aggressive, but it's still manipulative, and even if it's passive manipulation, I don't like it.
Yeah. And you don't like how they make you feel like a bad person if you say no?
Oh, I was judged when I said no. Even though I politely declined, you could tell that there was like a wince. It's awkward.
Eyes.
It is awkward on the other side too. They have to ask it, and they don't like it. And when they get told no, right, they don't want to say, "What are you, an asshole? Do you hate animals? Do you hate kids?"
Do you know that when I say too that I started to sort of see Trump differently and see things differently politically, the biggest push out of leaning left that I was the left themselves, was the people in it. Because I watched how if I even questioned, if I even said, yeah, he's a jerk, but he didn't actually say that, though. Let's hate about something else because that's not a good example. Or, yeah, maybe you don't like him, but actually this didn't happen. And I'm starting to wonder what's true. And I'm starting to think that like these media organizations are telling lies. And then I even went and I asked somebody, they were part of the LGBTQ community. I don't know them, but I saw online. And I have friends part of that community who I support in many ways. And I said, hey, when you talk about that, like they're taking your rights away, could you show me some stuff that you guys have or some resources you have like that maybe the general public is missing that we could see what you mean? Because I'm like, I'm not seeing it. So by all means, you do. Tell me. And the hate I got for even asking. And it was a legit question. It wasn't a gotcha moment. I'm not some right winger that's just trying to debate you. I am somebody who is in the middle, who is questioning, who is gathering information. And for even doing that, the left that pushed against me and tried to paint me as a bad person because I questioned it, I went, count me out. I'm out of that then. If that's what you guys are, that's not what I am. And like, hate it or not. And I'm not saying it's all Democrats and it's all liberals, but the fact that you weren't allowed to even question or look into anything, to me, was the biggest red flag that Trump derangement syndrome is a real thing.
And when it comes to politics, like if you adopt dogma, right, and which a lot of politics is, it means that one person that speaks out against, not even against, but challenges it or questions it or gets curious about it, undermines, right, the motivation for the people who are supporting it. So if you had, let's just say you were running for mayor, right, and all of the people who support you would ask you questions that make you look good, right? That would be supporting you because I want to get you elected. I'm not going to ask a question that's good for a voter, like, hey, there's one time that someone said to you shoplift. Did you shoplift? Everybody look at you like, what are you trying to do? Why are you eroding, her integrity here by just simply asking that question? That's when it comes dogmatic and anything that flies in the face of making it easier to push on the activism, right? It can't sustain the scrutiny. If it were me, right, and I was in the gay and lesbian community or the transgender or whatever as part of that, and I knew my stuff, I was well researched at it, and you said something like, what was the question? Like, what freedoms and liberties do you not have that other people have?
Yeah, they were saying Trump's taking away all our rights, and I said, can you show me how?
Okay, so what would you guess is the right and liberty, if you scan the rules and regulations and laws that apply to all people, which one of them hurt gays, lesbians, transgenders? Make their argument for them.
I feel like I was hearing things about healthcare.
Okay, so let's just say you're a gay couple, and there's states where you can't get married. So you can't get a family insurance plan, which makes it more expensive for you to carry insurance than a straight couple would. Okay, so that would be, how do you remedy this? How do you make it? So let's just say we create unions, like two people can get married and they can be treated from insurance coverage like a straight couple would be. And then all of the risks are formulated in that different thing. And now we've extended insurance to you. So you can engineer lots of ways to accomplish the thing where I agree with you. If two people that are just friends want to live in a house and create a family, should a person be extended insurances? Yeah, just like everybody else. Now, the qualifying for a family plan, it's hard to take one thing and make it into another thing. So you're not a family unless we change the rules to make you a family. How many reasonable people would take a gay couple and say they weren't a family that could be covered by insurance? There'd have to be some real assholes, because insurance, all they have to do is cover the risks that poses. And as long as it's priced for the actual risk, why would we want to discriminate against a union of some kind? And that would be a really easy way to, you being the activist, being able to plead your case on the thing that you're actually trying to remedy, and then engineering a way that satisfies that remedy.
Yeah. Like, just say what it is that you're experiencing.
And we just went through that rehearsal, right? That's all you have to do. It's not like we have liberties unnamed. I'm not going to tell you about them. I'm just going to be mad about them.
I'm going to yell for even asking. How could you not know?
Yes. All politicians should have to take sodium pentothal. That would be amazing.
What is sodium pentothal?
It's truth serum. Like, it makes people tell the truth. They get a little loopy and they just start spouting the truth.
Well, and here's the thing, though. Here's where that kind of goes awry. The truth can be the truth in a different context. Somebody can say something and they're going to say, well, did you say that? Yes, you did. But here's in the context in which it was said, and it's a totally different meaning. Or if it was said sarcastically, it's a totally different meaning. And so, while yes, absolutely, I think there are bold-faced lies happening for sure. But I also think people, to push their own agenda of whatever side they're leaning, will take something that is this much truth and run with it in a different direction than it was supposed to go.
It would still be fun to watch all of our legislature on truth serum.
And then you have to ask them about the Epstein files.
You do. So I had this conversation with my wife on a hike, and the two of us have both had dreams about murdering and burying bodies, right? Because when we're walking around the woods, you know that's a great place to dispose of a body. So we were talking about, if ever we were hooked up to a lie detector test or had, sodium pentothal injected in us, would we tell on ourselves? If said, have you ever murdered someone? Would we think through our brain and say, yes, I have murdered someone, and tell a truth that to us seemed true, but wasn't in the real world true? You
like, kind of like a political answer, kind of, where you're like, like you just lied enough to pass it,
Yeah, would it hold up to scrutiny if that happened? Because so politicians who believe something, like Cory Booker's of the world, who are entrenched in the things that come out of his brain, does he think he's telling the truth, and therefore, if you loaded him up on truth serum, whether or not he would just say the same things he thinks is true? Objective truth versus convinced truth, delusional truth.
So your wife and you spent the weekend planning a murder and how you would get away with it.
Yeah, disposing of bodies. How would you do it, by the way? I don't know if we could talk about this kind of stuff on YouTube, but
you'd probably I just went to like a Carol Baskin scenario where like if you fed it to an animal,
okay,
it'd be very difficult probably to find any remains.
Yeah, because I think Dexter did that with the alligators in Florida. He would go to the swamp and float his bodies.
Yeah, you'd almost have to have it like the body consumed probably by an animal. Probably.
Yeah, but they never, there's always animal carcasses. So you got to make sure that the animal does the whole thing, the whole job.
Yeah, because one, then you sort of have this like, there's the murder weapon, the animal killed him.
Mm-hmm.
There's not a lot of DNA left because it's in the animal and digested. So it kind of goes through both of those.
Okay. Anyway, stupid topic. BJ's sweating because we just brought up murder.
BJ's like, can you not? Can you not?
Yeah, we have that habit of talking about things like that. Other world leaders are calling this summit the G6 summit. They are not counting the U.S. as part of the G7 anymore. So it's not just Julie.
What?
The other nations, since we're pulling out of some of these international organizations, we're not being included in their stuff, right? And so liberals hate that because they love us being part of we're the main economy, we're the main powerhouse, and we get bossed around in a lot of these organizations where we fund it, but our opinion doesn't carry much weight. And it's a charity, group more than anything, where we give it away and get nothing in return. So Trump just joining has been a little bit of a slap in the face to liberals who like us being part of those organizations. So it doesn't bother me at all. We're not part of these groups. We were not benefiting from being part of them. So let's have them invite us at a later time with somebody who knows how to negotiate our place in these groups. And I think it was, what was it? Was it the UN who they placed an actual terrorist leader on the Council of Terrorism? It's that kind of shit that happens, like crazy stuff.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway,
Julie says, are you subscribing to the alternative truth theory?
I don't know what that is. What's the alternative truth theory?
Is that like where you're telling like a half truth? Is that it? Or, I technically didn't lie, but
I subscribe to objective truth. Truth is not an absolute. Truth is anybody can come. This is like science. I'm a big science guy. So anything somebody can question, right? Mm-hmm. And then the other person throws evidence. And then through whittling away through the whole debate comes out with not an absolute, but an objective truth where you had more than people weigh in. And so if I said that pen is blue, right? And you said that pen is yellow, us going back and forth until we've both gotten rid of all the things that you can object to and I can object to, we're left with something. Now, that doesn't make it absolute because somebody in the future can bring more evidence and more perspective on it. And until it's debated, until there's nothing else to debate, you have an objective truth. So anybody has a right to be able to challenge anything that is an objective truth to make it even better. That's the function of debate, is to make our objective truth more solid. And I use bloodletting, for instance. Bloodletting was an objective truth at one point, where everybody would agree that in order to heal someone, using blood, getting blood out of the system, which thought to be the blood was the carrier of all disease.
Yeah.
That somebody came along and said, I got something better. I push back on that. And let's just say that it was a truth already. So you can't challenge the truth. We'd still be using bloodletting. And that's same thing with political discourse. And
didn't they used to think cigarettes were good for you.
Cigarette. Well, that might have been marketing, but I'm sure at one time opium
There
was
was
thought to be super
something.
good for you too.
Yeah, like they said, like, oh, glass of red wine is good for your heart.
Yeah.
And then
And that's the danger of the dogma is once you figure out what you think the truth is, nobody's allowed to question it, and they get mad at you if you do, because that is settled science. And that is the when you talk in absolutes, I know that it's dogmatic at that point.
yeah, that's true.
Like I never talked to Hunter about his business ventures. Yeah. Same thing. Liars lie. And, especially people in politics, they have to lie a whole lot to stay in politics. And so you could just put asterisks. All of them are liars, right?
Yeah.
And if you want to combat and conquer lying, then you have to hold everybody who lies accountable, never vote for them ever again because they lied. Or we can lower our standard and say, well, he only murdered 2 people. Like if he murders 3, I'm not voting for him, but he only murdered 2. So I'm willing to stomach 2 murders.
And you have to accept that if you hear something that was in fact a lie about somebody, that maybe there are more lies.
You think?
Like maybe I don't know much about that person like I thought I did because the information I got was a lie. Then
all right, let's change subjects. Let me make sure I hit everything. Do you have anything, by the way?
I don't think so. I mean, there was one big news story we didn't talk about over the weekend. The politician that was killed.
Oh, yes, Minnesota.
Yeah, Minnesota. So
Okay.
I got a little bit of what happened there, but not a lot. You might know more.
Okay, so a dude dressed up as a cop, and he had a list of politicians that he wanted to kill. So he posed as a cop and went to their home, shot them, dressed up in a rubber mask, I think I saw.
Yeah.
And really, he was captured. So he didn't kill himself, and he wasn't killed by police. So we have him. And he had more people on the list other than those 2 representatives that was on, probably.
Were they all of one party?
I don't know. I think they were all Democrats from what I heard, but it got too political because each group wanted to cast this guy as either a Trump guy or as a Tim Walz appointee or whatever.
I heard one side that said the woman that was killed was a Democrat that then spoke out against something Democratic or sided with a
why
Republican.
does that matter, by the way? Like if they were a Trump supporter, what does that mean? Or if they were a Democrat, what does that mean? Overall, it's a dude who killed
some murderer who killed somebody. Yeah.
I mean, if the deal was that if there was a party that was exacerbating the problem, it would be helpful to know that, this was somebody who Tim Walz put on rails to do political murders versus Republicans and same thing.
Which is a side, I think, that people are insinuating that Walz knew this dude
but both sides have said it.
Right.
He voted for Trump and he he had no kings on his seat. So was he Trump or was he anti-Trump?
Yeah.
He was appointed by Tim Walz. The one suspicious thing, which means that you have Minnesota, huge liberal state. The guy writes a manifesto and whoever's managing this decides not to release the manifesto. And that usually means one thing, that it implicates the Democrats because it makes the Democrats. So if I were to take a guess, I say it's a 60% chance that this guy was a Democrat who was probably a little bit jaded by his involvement with the Democrat Party, and he was getting even. That's the most likely story as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I think both sides are just chomping at the bit to make it seem like somebody who's part of the hateful party. Depending on which party you're in, it's one or the other, and everybody thinks it's the other. And see, they're so hateful that they're murderers. Yeah, and the right wants to say that about the left, and the left wants to say that about the right.
Yep.
Which is a shame. It's just an evil, murderer, sick psycho that killed somebody.
That's it. But if you don't think the temperature right now is really high on people that are so displeased with everything and are 2 degrees from doing something stupid like that, every politician to say, well, I don't want that to be me. Let's try to ratchet things down, bring people back into the moderate level versus saying, screw it. Let's let all the crazy, we want full anarchy. We want people to go crazy. Let's keep increasing the temperature and watch this keep happening. Like, how'd that happen? So, but none of the intelligent people will go there.
Yeah. I mean, there's assassination attempt on Trump. Now this person has been killed. I'm sure there are numerous others that just didn't make national news. So yeah, when do all the leaders on both sides say, everybody, this is getting out of hand? We need to have some sort of unity here. And no, nobody does.
They can't help themselves. I don't remember what happened, but the Democrats were talking about that the rhetoric was getting too much and that they're afraid that people were going to take action. And then in the next press conference, they ratchet up and raise the temperature. So they cannot help themselves.
Oh, yeah. It's like you hear Kamala and Walz for how long talk about, oh, we need to work together and we need to just have peace and we need to respect everybody and be nice. And then you see a rally, they're doing the exact thing.
Yeah,
it's a freaking pep rally about fighting the other side.
Carter says, Joe, someday could you talk about 9/11 conspiracies? I'd like to know how Building 7 happened to come down. Been reading a lot about this.
Ooh.
There was one group, and this was early on. This was only a couple years after 9/11. I think it was called Loose Change. And there was some dude who took like the physics approach and how this is unlikely to happen and jet fuel burning at a certain temperature and steel melting, and it was designed implosion, and the plane really didn't hit the Pentagon, and Building 6 collapsed separate from the other fire. And so there's a lot of people who have devised conspiracy theories on it. We'll have to dedicate some time to it. I'm not a subscriber that it was an inside job. I wouldn't be surprised if it was, but I've not seen enough evidence that says, conclusively that this was controlled by other people other than a plane hitting a building. Have you seen any of those, by the way?
I've heard that there are some where, the way it fell and how it was almost sort of like from the inside, not from getting hit on the outside. And I haven't really dived.
And they did a lot of them where you had someone who wanted to buy into the conspiracy, just throw all of their evidence out there, and you had somebody react to every piece of that evidence. And usually on the persuasive side, the person who countered the arguments, like for instance, one building was connected to Building 7, and there was a tunnel that goes from Building 1 to Tower 1 to Building 7. And so it caught on fire, and it wasn't anywhere near the deal. His evidence, and again, I'm paraphrasing this is a long time ago that I watched it, but because the tunnels were connected, it is likely that when the building imploded, it pushed all of the fire through the tunnel and then lit fires in the other building. You see what I mean? Stuff like, I want to use that as an example's sake, that there might be more to it with people who know way more than you or I. But after watching a lot of those counterpoint things, I was not persuaded that it was an inside job.
We should do an entire show about conspiracy theories.
Okay, I'm game.
And it could be government, it could be Hollywood, musicians, it could be major news stories, like
flat Earth. Can I do flat Earth?
You could do flat Earth. You could do the moon landing. You could do all kinds of stuff. You could do military ones.
What's your favorite that you think has the most, or the most likely to have some merit to it?
Oh God, I don't know. I'd have to really look.
Moon landing, was it faked or was it real?
I want to believe it's real.
Okay.
So I'm going with real until I look more into it.
Let me get more specific.
Okay.
The footage that everybody saw, was it real?
Okay. That's a different story. I'd like to think it was real.
Okay.
I gotta look more into it. We should look at that. I think there's a lot in maybe Hollywood and people we think are crazy and maybe they're not crazy.
Okay.
We could have like lists that we bring to the table and just go to crazy town with all these supposed conspiracy
I'm
theories.
cool with that.
Want to do that for the next show?
Yeah. Is the Earth flat or a spheroid?
I mean, most people think it's a sphere, but you have a pretty compelling argument that it's not. Or maybe not flat, but just not a sphere. Maybe a different shape.
All depends on what your definition of what is.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's go all kinds of stuff.
Okay.
I'm going to Google I'm going to have a list when we meet again. And anybody else who wants to throw some on here too to give us some ideas, we'll do a little research.
Yeah. What share with us? What would you like to see us discuss?
It could be aliens, ghosts,
aliens
Hollywood,
is a good one.
Illuminati.
Real quick.
Yeah.
On the alien side.
Aliens. Yeah.
What's your theory on why we've had so many interactions with UFOs, aliens, landings, abductions over the course of years? It's not just a good storyteller. This has gone hundreds of years of, reports and whatever. So give me your theory as to why it's so prevalent in culture.
Our producer is warning us. Why it's so prevalent?
Mm-hmm.
I think people want
to believe. That's cool.
Yeah.
And do you think we have been visited?
I find it difficult to imagine that out of such vast space, we are the only living things. I know there are other living things. Now, are they living things with intelligence enough to travel and communicate and have interactions? And I don't know. Part of me is like, that's make believe. And then part of me is like, but it's pretty freaking big out there to think we are the only intelligent life.
Okay. So as a kid, I had this recurring dream. Okay. And
a couple minutes
in fourth grade, during science, we were studying protons, electrons, the nucleus. And I had this theory that electrons were planets on a molecular level. You scale things down, you have these orbiting bodies around an atom, and there might be people living on those electrons that are circling the protons, right?
Yeah.
And I thought, like, okay, and you have to get beyond the silliness for 1 minute of that picture. And then what if there were life on those electrons, like spinning bodies? Okay. What would they, from the perspective of somebody living on an electron, some kind of biological something or other, when they look out at space, would it seem like it's infinite to them? Would it seem like space, like there are other solar systems, there are other, universes, or not universes, but galaxies. So from that perspective, it would look like it's an infinite space. And then you scale up to that thing that's making up, a mouse here. And then we have that same experience looking up. And what if there's a scale infinitely up and infinitely down, either getting super big, where we're part of a universe that's bigger than us, and then that little electron is a universe that's smaller than us?
Like, what if we're all on Orion's belt, like in Men in Black?
Yes, exactly.
Where the cat's holding a whole galaxy
in the belt, and there's another cat in a galaxy that's bigger than that, and infinitely smaller and infinitely bigger.
Julie says, I agree, Kellen. It is arrogant to think we are the only beings in the universe. And Carter says, holy cow, I agree with Julie.
We just brought two of my favorite people together, and we will end the show with the unity that was provided by this show.
Unity today. We'll talk about this when we're back.
Conspiracy theories tomorrow. We'll catch you then.
Or Wednesday.
Oh, no, Wednesday.
Wednesday.
Yeah. Wednesday we'll do conspiracy theories. So everyone have a good day.
Wacky Wednesday.
It's not wacky. This is legitimate conspiracy theories. All right, have a good one.
Thank you for listening to this show on Youngstown Studio. This is original Youngstown content. Feel free to share our videos and tell your friends about us. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Facebook. Thank you for your support.